Evening again. As a reminder, we record the session. We post our classes on our YouTube page. So if you miss any of the classes, you can go there and check. We are back to the Spirits book. We are studying the introduction, and we are on item 6. So what have we studied in the Spirits book in the introduction? So we are beginning, and as I said weeks past, it is as we are starting to learn about Spiritism. And so we saw the definition of soul according to Spiritism, which is an incarnated being. When we are in the spiritual world, we call ourselves spirits, errant spirits, wandering spirits. Again, definition of soul according to Spiritism. You are going to find different definitions outside, and I'm not, they are not wrong. It's just that there are different definitions. We learned how all started with turning tables, with the planchettes, and then with the writing through psychography. And then we just started on item 6, the basic, the critical points of Spiritism, as Kardec says here. So we went through the first 3 or 4, but we are going to start from the beginning of item 6. I'm going to ask Zoraida to read from the beginning, and then we stop. We are going to read like 5 or 6, and then we'll stop and talk a little bit about that. Okay?
Okay. The communicating beings call themselves spirits or geniuses, as we have already remarked. In many cases, these spirits belonged to human beings who at one time lived on earth. They make up the spiritual world, as we make up the physical world during our earthly life. We will now briefly summarize the critical points of Spiritism that the spirits have communicated to us in order that we may easily counter certain objections. God is eternal, absolute, immaterial, unique, all-powerful, supremely just and good. God has created the universe, which comprises all beings, animate and inanimate, material and immaterial. Material beings make up the visible or physical world. The material beings make up the invisible or spiritual world. In other words, the spirit world. The spiritual world is the normal or original and eternal world, pre-existed to and surviving everything else. The physical world is only secondary. It could cease to exist or never have existed, and this would have no effect on the essence of the spiritual world. Spirits temporarily don an ephemeral material envelope, which is destroyed upon death, and their freedom is restored. Among the different species of corporeal beings, God has chosen humankind to embody spirits that have reached a particular degree of development. This is what gives humankind its moral and intellectual superiority over all others.
Okay.
Okay.
So we started this last week. We discussed the concepts of God, so we're not going to go back to that. We are going to talk a little bit about the spiritual world, which is as Kardec says, the normal, original, and eternal world. Again, the spiritual world always existed and continues to exist. The physical world could cease to exist or never have existed, and the spiritual world will still exist and won't be affected. So all this we discussed last week. Now, this is where we start today. Spirits temporarily don an ephemeral material envelope, which is destroyed upon death, and their freedom is restored. So the concept here that Kardec is telling us is that when we are incarnated, we have a material envelope, ephemeral. And when we die, this material envelope is destroyed and the spirit's freedom is restored. The interesting concept here is that Kardec is telling us that when we are incarnated, we are in a sort of a prison. We are only free when we are in the spiritual world. And why does he mentions that? Because when we are in the physical world, we have restrictions to our freedom of knowing and expressing ourselves by our physical body. So our physical body imposes restraints. Our memory, we are not able, most cases, to remember previous existences. We don't remember our time in the spiritual world. We don't remember our loved ones that from previous incarnations. So everything is new. And we are going to discuss why that later in the book, why it's important for us to forget about our previous existences and our time in the spiritual world. And then Kardec says that God has chosen humankind to embody spirits that have reached a particular degree of development. So we are incarnated as human beings here, which are those that have already developed or starting to develop, are developing their free will and their ability to think, reason, and act upon their thoughts. We know that when we go through the inferior phases of our spiritual evolution, when we are not called spirits, we are called spiritual principle. As we go through the mineral, vegetable, and animal phases, we are developing instinct, we are developing primitive intelligence in the animal phase, in the most elevated animal phase, but only we fully reach the ability to reason, to use our free will when we reach the stage of humankind here on this planet. So we're talking about Earth because that's what we understand, what we know. And we have, as Kardec says, moral and intellectual superiority over all others, despite sometimes you look at some people and think that they are acting worse than animals. But animals act upon instinct. So once you become a spirit, you start to create consequences for your actions. When you are in the animal, when we are in the animal phase, there is no cause and consequence because there is no understanding of what we are doing, and no karma, as they call it in the Eastern religions. Okay.
Okay.
Any questions here? Comments?
Okay.
Okay. Next.
Okay. The soul is an incarnate spirit whose body solely serves as an envelope. A human being is made up of three things. One, the body or material being, similar to animals and animated by the same vital principle. Two, the soul or immaterial being, a spirit incarnated in the body. Three, the link that bonds the soul and the body together, the liaison between matter and spirit. People therefore has two natures. Their bodies give them a physical or animal nature, of which they possess the instincts, and their soul gives them a spiritual nature. The perispirit is a semi-material envelope connecting the body and the spirit. Death is the destruction of the body's material envelope, but the spirit keeps its second envelope, the perispirit. This envelope is an ethereal body that's invisible to us in its normal state, but spirits can occasionally render it visible and even tangible, such as the case of apparitions. A spirit is not an abstract, undefined being conjured up by your imaginations. It is a real, distinct being that, in some cases, can be seen, heard, and touched.
Okay.
Okay.
So, important definitions here that we are that we use in Spiritism that are some of the basics of Spiritism that we need to go over. So we are, as Julio used to say, a triad, or
yes,
or a biad. He used to say that. Yeah. Well, we are composed of 3 parts when we are incarnated and 2 parts when we are discarnated, when we are in the spiritual world. So a human being is composed of the body, or the material being, which is similar to animals and animated by the same vital principle. We discussed vital principle on the introduction, also on I think item 2, I believe, when we discussed that all living things on Earth are animated by the same vital principle. So starting with plants to animals to human beings, we are all animated by the same vital principle. So if you analyze the body of a human or of an animal, and I know that we did scientists did the experiments with I think with DNA, that we have 99 or 98% similarity with rats, right, in terms of DNA. So we know that we are all the same matter. Now, what differentiates us is, again, we are an incarnated spirit. So the soul, or immaterial being, is a spirit that is incarnated in the body, that uses the physical body when it's incarnated. When the physical body dies, the spirit continues living. So we are eternal. We never die. What dies is our physical body that goes back to nature, disintegrates, goes back to nature, and when we incarnate again, reincarnate, which is something we're going to discuss a little bit later, we form a new physical body for that existence. Now, how does the spirit connect to the physical body? This is the third part, which is the link that connects the spirit, the spirit and the body. And this link is called the perispirit. So this is a concept that Kardec brings here for the first time. We're going to discuss more in depth later in the book what is the perispirit and why Kardec chose this name perispirit. Again, this word was created by Kardec. It's a word that was first used by Kardec, and it's basically used in Spiritism. I don't remember seeing it outside Spiritism. So the spiritual body that the spirit has, again, the creation has the spirit and universal fluid. So the creation has 3 parts: God, second part, the spirit, or spiritual principle, and then we have the universal fluid, that everything derives from it, including our physical body and our perispirit. When it says here, it's a semi-material envelope, it's just that it's semi-material in terms of it's not physical in the sense that we know here, but still it's matter, and it's matter derived from the universal fluid. So he says again that the destruction of the body's material envelope is what we call death, but the spirit keeps the perispirit and continues living in the spiritual world with the perispirit. It's the perispirit, or the spirits in the spiritual world, are invisible to most of us, except for the mediums that have the ability to see the spiritual world, or when they make themselves visible in the case of apparitions, Again, we are studying this with Elmo on the second part in the Medium's book. But when we have an apparition, meaning a spirit materializes in front of us, you don't need to see to be a medium to see it. Everybody will see it. So very important here, which for us is obvious, but when you go outside Spiritism, it's incredible how people have no idea what a spirit is, and they think it's an abstract and not defined being. And Spiritism, Kardec Spiritism tells us that spirit is not an abstract, undefined thing. It's a real, distinct being that can be, in some cases, seen, heard, and touched. So mediums can see spirits, can hear spirits, and if they, in the cases of materialization, we can touch spirits, and we can touch in our travels to the spiritual world during our dreams, our sleep, and our dreams. We also can connect with the spirits and touch them. Okay, so these are all very important basic concepts of Spiritism. If you have any questions here, it's very important to understand these basic concepts, because that guides us through the study of Spiritism. Again, soul, according to Spiritism, is a spirit incarnated in the body. The spiritual body is called perispirit. We can call it also spiritual body, and sometimes when we talk to people outside Spiritism, we use spiritual body, because if you tell them perispirit, they will have no idea what we are talking about. So if you find yourself talking to someone that doesn't know Spiritism, I recommend you use spiritual body. We have a spiritual body when we are back in the spiritual world. The spiritual body, the physical body is modeled according to the spiritual body. So when we go back to the spiritual world, and that's why a lot of those that go back to the spiritual world without being aware of the survival of the physical body find themselves not believing they have died, because they look at themselves and they see exactly what they were before the physical body died, because the perispirit is a reflection of the physical body. It's the other way around, but when we go back to the spiritual world, if we look at ourselves, we'll see exactly what we saw in the mirror before going back to the spiritual world. So that causes a lot of confusion in the spirits going back to the spiritual world, and that are not aware of our spiritual nature, or that think that we go back to a whole, or we lose our individuality, or we lose other things. So according to Spiritism, the only thing we lose is the physical body. Our mind, our essence continues to be exactly the same. And I'm having a question here: if the perispirit persists through all spiritual evolution. The perispirit evolves as we evolve. The less evolved we are, the more gross the perispirit is. So in inferior spirits more connected to Earth, they have a very heavy, dense perispirit. And as we evolve and the perispirit becomes more and more ethereal. And so that's why one of the reasons that more evolved spirits use less evolved spirits for physical manifestations, because they are more in connection with the physical world, and it's easier for them to act on physical matter, spirits of a less evolved nature. The more evolved you are, the more difficult it is for you to act on matter, in the sense of your perispirit being more and more refined. It is said, I don't know if it's true or not, that for Jesus to incarnate on earth and to adapt his perispirit, which is a perispirit of a pure spirit, to the physical body of the earth, it took him 1,000 years. It is said, I don't know if it's true or not. But you can, for that example, you can see how distant they are from the matter, our gross matter of the physical world. Okay, obviously the spirits, more evolved spirits, also use the less evolved spirits because it's an opportunity for these less evolved spirits to learn also. So that's why they are used in the physical manifestations and other things related to the to action of the more evolved spirits in the physical world. Okay, any other questions?
Just
Comments?
a few. Can you hear me?
Yes. Sure, Elmo, go ahead.
Yeah, just a few details, which are apparently insignificant details, but could create confusion in some minds, and it's good to go over. On item number 2, when they say the soul or incarnate being, a spirit incarnate in the body, don't think that in the body means inside of the physical body. Okay, read more as in association with the physical body, because it's being revealed to us that we, the spirit, are not inside of this physical organic body. We are associated with it, more like side by side to it, but we don't know exactly how, where do we situate it, but not in the body. And another one that when it says in apparitions, we can see and touch the spirit. Just to make sure everybody understand, we can see and touch the petty spirit, not the spirit itself. It becomes very hard for, let's say, for Kardec to make all those explanations all the time, but it's good for us to refresh our knowledge in those understanding knowledges. We are not in the body, we are in association with the body. And when we see a discarnated spirit in an apparition, or even as a medium, we are seeing the petty spirit, not the spirit itself.
Yeah.
Okay.
We cannot see the spirit. Very good point. And also the two very good points, Elmo. Thank you very much, because it's really important. Yeah. And the concept of the spirit not being we the spirit and our perispirit not being inside the body, it's something very important. And it's, you know, if you see these horror movies and these movies that talk about ghosts and possessions, it always gives an impression that they enter inside the body when they take possession of another body. And even when in the cases of obsession or possession, is association. It's never inside. It's association. It's mind to mind association. Very good point, Elmo. Thank you. Anything else?
João?
Yes.
Yes, I have one quick question. Just going back to that paragraph that says, this is what gives humankind its moral intellectual superiority over all others. I'm kind of confused if they are talking about like different planets and worlds in a way,
No.
or
No,
not.
just Earth. Just Earth.
Just Earth. Okay.
Yes, they're talking here on Earth. So the other, all others is all other animals or plants and living beings.
Okay, got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's
Thank
only
you.
Earth. Yeah. It's, again, very good question, because it's important. We have the idea of more evolved worlds with more evolved spirits. You know, they all, of course, they are morally and intellectually more evolved, superior to us. So, you know, we're talking here about Earth. So God has chosen humankind to embody spirits. It's here on Earth that we're talking about. Okay. Okay. All right.
Spirits belong to different classes and are not equal in power, intelligence, knowledge, or integrity. Those of the highest order are superior spirits, set apart from those beneath them by their perfection, knowledge, proximity to God, and love of goodness. There are angels or pure spirits. The other classes are progressively further removed from this perfection. Lower ranking spirits are inclined to most of our passions, hatred, envy, jealousy, pride, and so on. They take pleasure in immortality and wrongdoing. There are some who are neither good nor bad, but are mischievous and troublesome rather than malicious. These spirits may be classified as capricious or foolish spirits. Spirits do not permanently belong to the same order. They are all distinct to ultimately reach perfection by passing through the different degrees of the spirit hierarchy. This betterment takes place through incarnation, which is imposed on some as an atonement and on others as a mission. Material life is a trial that must be experienced many times until absolute perfection has been attained. It is a type of filter from which spirits emerge more or less purified.
Okay, thanks.
Mhm.
So when we talk here, and actually the further in the book, we are going to discuss more in depth these different classes and all the different. There are 10 different classes according to Spiritism. But for us now, the basic that we need to understand is that there are different degrees of spiritual evolution. The highest order are the perfected spirits, superior spirits, because they reach the highest level of moral evolution. So they are said to work in connection with God, and they are, in a sense, perfected spirits. We discussed a little bit that we will always continue to evolve because we will never reach God, because God is the absolute perfection. And I know there is absolute perfection down here, but what we say is that we can achieve relative perfection if we consider God being absolute perfect. Okay, but the absolute perfection that they mention here, down here, is the absolute perfection in terms of what spirits can achieve. Once we reach this level of evolution of being a perfected spirit, we no longer need to reincarnate. We may incarnate on a mission like Jesus did on earth, but we no longer need to reincarnate. The natural law of reincarnation that we're going to talk a little bit later is a necessity for us to evolve, is a natural law, and it's, when it says here it's imposed, it means that it's part of the natural law. So it's something that we cannot avoid. We cannot avoid going through the process of reincarnation, as we cannot avoid progressing. Even if we look that we are not progressing, we are always progressing. The law of progress is one of the natural laws that tell us that we never go backwards. We are always moving forward. So in Spiritism, you learn that we do not reincarnate as an animal or as an inferior being. We are always incarnating in our human format here on Earth. We all, of course, we can reincarnate in a less evolved world if we are not able to follow the evolution of the world we are living in. But doesn't mean that we are going to reincarnate as a less able in terms of moral evolvement or intellectual evolvement. It can be constrained a little bit. So let's not talk about intellectual evolvement. Moral evolvement. Everything that you achieve morally always stay with you, and you bring through all incarnations. So we always joke that if you learn to be patient, you will never again lose your patience, and you will be patient throughout your all incarnations. So lower ranking spirits are the spirits that fall prey to their passions, hatred, envy, jealousy, pride. And these are the imperfections that we need to work as we evolve. Of course, we won't be able to overcome them in one incarnation. That's why we have several incarnations. Several reincarnations. As we evolve, we keep fighting to overcome our imperfections. And as we overcome them, we don't fall back to them. That's very important, also the progress. And again, going back to the patience, I always joke that you never lose your patience. Either you have it or you don't. So if you don't have patience, that's why when you are prone to act on your impatience. But the concept of acquiring the qualities to overcome these inferior passions and tendencies, once you reach them, you have them with you and you carry with you throughout the incarnations. So, of course, spirits do not belong to the same order permanently because we are always evolving until we reach the stage of perfected spirits, and then we belong to that order forever. But until we reach them, we are moving forward. We are moving upward. And we are going to discuss the different classes later. We're not going to go through them here. There are 3 big classes, and 2 of those classes, there are subdivisions. And of course, the 3rd class is the perfected spirits. There is no subdivision. But the other 2 have some subdivisions that is more of qualifications of different types of spirits. And again, we are never really put in a box. We're not placed in boxes. It's just descriptions of the tendencies of spirits in different degrees of evolution. Okay.
Yes.
Questions? Okay, there is one question here. Spirits form hierarchically organized societies according to their stage of evolution. When we are in the spiritual world, we find ourselves surrounded by spirits that are at the same level of evolution that we are. And that's why it's so important that we always reinforce here the idea that the more we achieve evolution here on this incarnation, the better we will find ourselves when we are back in the spiritual world. Because here on Earth, we are surrounded by spirits that are at different levels of evolution. So you are incarnated together with a Mother Teresa, which is clearly a more evolved spirit than we all are. But when you are back in the spiritual world, she's going to be high above you at a different plane of existence that we cannot reach. Now, more evolved spirits, you can always go down, and they do this all the time to help the spirits, less evolved spirits in need. But a less evolved spirit can have sometimes glimpses of a more evolved plane of existence in the spiritual world, but they are not able to stay there. And we see through the books of André Luiz, Life in the Spiritual World, descriptions of spirits that there is one on the Messengers, the 2nd book, that talks about with André Luiz about his experience in Nosso and he's very eager to have an opportunity to go to Nosso but still doesn't have the merit to go to Nosso And André Luiz, when he talks to his mother that comes and visits him in Nosso his mother lives in a more evolved plane of existence, and he would like to go there. They give him glimpses of what is there, but of course he never can never go there. So the spiritual world is very subdivided in the different planes of existence according to our level of evolvement. Okay.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments? Nope. Okay, let's move on.
Okay. Upon leaving the body, the soul returns to the spirit world from which it originated. and from which it will enter into a new material existence after a given period of time, during which it will be a wandering spirit. Spirits must incarnate many times. Consequently, we all have had numerous existences and will have others, more or less perfect, either on earth or in other worlds. The incarnation of spirits always take place in human race. It would be wrong to presume that a soul or spirit could be incarnated in the body of an animal. The succession of a spirit's corporeal lives are always progressive and never regressive. But the speed of our progress depends on the effort that we put forward to reach perfection. The qualities of our soul are those of the spirit incarnated within us. Therefore, a good person is the incarnation of a good spirit, and a bad person is the incarnation of an impure spirit.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Let's stop here. So, when we die, when we leave, when our physical body dies, when we leave the body, the soul returns to the spirit world from where it came from and wait there for a period of time. After a given period of time, we will come back to a new reincarnation. During the time where we are in the spiritual world, we are called, according to Spiritism, a wandering spirit or an errant spirit, okay? The given period of time, which is a common question that we have, how long do we spend in the spiritual world? There is no specific amount of time that we spend in the spiritual world. It's according to our needs, to our work there and here. In the very beginning of our evolution, when we are primitive spirits, there is no use for us in the spiritual world, so we come back very quickly to a new incarnation, and our incarnations are also shorter. So we go through a series of incarnations, short incarnations and short time in the spiritual world. As we evolve, we have the ability to spend more time in the spiritual world because we have the ability to learn in the spiritual world. So we have to think of the spiritual world. An example would be a school, that the spiritual world is a school, and the physical world is where we come to put in practice what we have learned in the spiritual world. Of course, we also learn in the physical world, and we are learning and evolving here. But in the spiritual world, because you are surrounded by spirits that are more or less of the same level of evolvement that we are, we don't have an opportunity to live amongst different types of spirits. And with that, we don't have the opportunity to experience the challenges that we experience here in the physical world, and that's why we need the incarnation. Of course, we can work in the spiritual world. We go through all the books of André Luiz, working and learning a lot in the spiritual world. But even a spirit like André Luiz that learned a lot, eventually had to come back to a new incarnation or reincarnation to put in practice the learnings that he had in the spiritual world. So, and again, they mention here that the incarnation always takes place in human race. So it's wrong to presume that a soul or spirit can be incarnated in the body of an animal. And that's the basic difference between Spiritism and the beliefs in reincarnation of the Eastern civilizations, that they believe that if you behave badly during an incarnation, you can come back as an animal, as a cockroach, as a rat or a snake. And in Spiritism, we learn that the law is of progress, so we are always progressive, as they said here. The succession of a spirit's corporeal lives are always progressive and never regressive. But the important thing here is the speed of our progress depends on us. So we make our choices according to our free will. So If we don't want to make any effort to evolve, we are still evolving, because, you know, when you look at the whole incarnation that you haven't done anything useful, as long as that you think you have not progressed, at the very least, you are learning that by doing nothing, you don't progress. So it is a learning and it is a progress. Very small, but it is a progress, because everything is an experience that we will learn and will help us. So if you are acting on your inferior tendencies, how are you progressing? Well, you are eventually, you look back and you learn from those experiences what you should not do. Those that look very inferior in these incarnations, if the law of progress is they were worse in previous incarnations. So one thing that I always tell people when they ask, why don't we remember all your incarnations? Well, this is the best version ever of yourself. Before, in previous incarnations, you were worse versions of yourself. So if we can barely deal with our present existence, with things that we have done in this existence, imagine if we start remembering all the worst things that we did in previous existences. That would cause us to be paralyzed by shame, by guilty, and would prevent us from moving forward. So the ability to forget our past is a blessing that allows us to work on ourselves to progress. So if you have doubts of what's happening to you, why you are going through these difficulties, we just have to take a deep look at ourselves, and we'll see the origins of our problems in our imperfections. So we bring with us, as they said here, our moral evolvement. So a good person is a spirit that is a good spirit. It's not a good spirit is not going to incarnate and become a bad person. There's no way to go back. Now, a less evolved spirit, so a bad person, is someone that is an inferior spirit, an impure spirit. It can improve, it should improve. The incarnation is an opportunity to improve, to progress. But if we are acting on our evil tendencies, on our imperfections, is a sign of a spirit that is still not evolved. Okay. Any questions? We have a question here. What do you mean by don't have any use in the spiritual world? I'm not sure I understood the question, but I think that when I said that when we are in the primitive stage of incarnations, there is nothing for us in the spiritual world to learn. Yes, because we are so primitive that our learning has to be in contact with the physical world. It's you know, when we are developing our free will and we are developing our acting on our basic instincts, there is not much for us to do in the spiritual world. We are surrounded by spirits that also don't know anything and don't know what to do there in the spiritual world. So we would be spending very little time there for the lack of ability to understand our surroundings and to act on our surroundings in the spiritual world, and we will come to a new incarnation. Now, once we have the ability to understand more about ourselves, the ability to use our free will with a more evolved free will, then we can start spending more time in the spiritual world. At the stage that we are now, we spend already a long time in the spiritual world. We can, again, we can incarnate after 30, 50, 100, or even 200 years, or even more, because there is, we can take advantage of our time in the spiritual world to learn more. Okay. Any other questions, comments? Ooh, everybody's very quiet today. Everybody knows all the basics. Good. Okay.
Okay, the soul, okay. The soul has its own individuality before incarnation. This individuality is preserved after its separation from the body. On its return to the spirit world, the soul is united with all those it has known on earth. In all its former lives are eventually recalled, along with the recollection of all the good and bad that it has done. An incarnated spirit is under the complete influence of matter. Individuals who are able to overcome this influence through the elevation and purification of their soul are one step closer to the good spirits, among whom they will one day be placed. Those who allow themselves to be controlled by bad passions and find satisfaction in physical appetites lower themselves to the level of impure spirits by allowing their animal natures to reign.
Okay.
Okay.
So again, we know that the concept that we are individual spirits. We never lose our individuality. We had it before our incarnation, and it's preserved after the separation from the body. So that's the basic concept of us as eternal spirits. Once we are created and we pass through the phase of spiritual principle and we become an individual spirit, we will eternally be an individual spirit with our own individuality. So, of course, the more we evolve, the more morally we evolve, the more we are going to be similar to more evolved spirits. You think of a, you think of a pyramid that we start on the bottom of the pyramid and our evolution takes us to the top of the pyramid. In the base of the pyramid, we have all sorts of different ways to go to the top and different paths to follow. The more closer we get to the top, we'll have less ways to reach it, and we'll be closer to those that are at the same level. When we are in the basic ones, we are far from from others, and we are very different from others. Okay, again, the pyramid is an analogy, but it's an analogy that we can use to think of our progress. That we have 1 million ways to climb the pyramid, which are different paths of evolution, and we are always moving up, even if we are moving very slowly. But the closer we get to the top, the more similar we are, because there is less paths to take to reach the top. Okay, so this is important here, and this is something that is it's always discussed. Once we return to the spiritual world, we are reunited with all those that it has known on earth, and all its former lives are eventually, and be very pay attention to this word, eventually recalled, along with the recollection of all the good and bad that he has done. Okay, so let's try to explain a little bit so we don't get confused. We are going to be reunited with those that we have known on earth, as long as they are still on the spiritual world, and as long as there are some particular connections with them. So let's say your grandmother. Your grandmother is someone that really cared for you and has followed you after she went back to the spiritual world, continues following you, and is still in the spiritual world, haven't started a new incarnation. She will be there to receive you when you go back to the spiritual world, and you'll be able to reconnect with her if you and her are at the same, in good conditions, let's say, because again, using André Luiz, and those that are studying the greater world with us, they are going to see next month or the month after when André Luiz meets his grandfather, that he had a very close connection, but is a spirit that is in the lower zones, and André Luiz is there to try to help him when he finally recognizes his grandfather. So, of course, when André Luiz went back to the spiritual world, and in the beginning he was complaining that nobody was there, and actually his mother was there from the beginning, but he couldn't see her. But when he became in a condition of receiving his mother, he met with his mother. His sisters and his father are in the lower zones, as his mother tells him, so they are not there to receive him because they are in no conditions. They live in their own problems. So we are reunited with those that we have known on earth, depending on our condition and their condition. So those that really love you, those that your loved ones that you know are good spirits, even if they don't have any religious beliefs or they don't have any belief in the afterlife, it doesn't matter. If they lead a good life, they lead an effort of progressing morally, and they have good hearts, they will find themselves after some time helped and assisted in the spiritual world, and very likely they will be there when you go back to the spiritual world if you also have done your job here and are in condition of reaching a place like Nosso Lar or some spiritual colony that will be able to receive you. So that's important. Now, your loving grandmother that died when you were a kid. So, and you died when you are 90 years old. So between you dying, your grandmother dying, 80 years had gone by. Maybe she had reincarnated already. 80 years is some time. So maybe she's already reincarnated as your granddaughter, your grandson, and so she won't be able to receive you back there in the spiritual world. So these are all eventualities that we have to consider. We cannot guarantee that we are going to meet our loved ones because it depends on where they are, their condition, where we are, and our condition. And the recollection of our former lives. What we remember is the existence we just left. So if I go back to the spiritual world tomorrow, this existence is what I am able to remember in its entirety. Previous existences I will know on a need to know basis, meaning if there is something important for me to remember that will help me progress or will help me solve problems that we have, I'll be able to recollect, to remember it. If there is nothing useful or it's going to create more problems for me than to help, I won't be able to remember. And again, why would you remember when you were living in caves as a primitive man or woman? There is no use for you to remember that. The same way we don't remember when we were 3 months old, because there's nothing there for us. 3 months old, we were just learning the basics of growing as a child. So we don't remember. So there's no need for us to remember incarnations that won't bring us any good. Now, you have this sworn enemy that you have to make amends in the spiritual world, and you have an opportunity to make amends in the spiritual world, you will be able then to remember what happened. The other day we had this experience in our mediumship meeting of someone that was struggling with their inability to change, the hatred, and he was taken back to some incarnations ago when he was in a battle and he killed many people and he abused many people, and that's and ended up making him block his emotions completely. So we had to go there for him to unblock his emotions to be able to relate again with the reality. And that was a very interesting experience. It was something of many incarnations ago, but it was necessary at that moment. So you are again, the important notion here is need to know basis. We are going to remember previous existence on need to know basis. Okay.
Yes.
When we are incarnated, we are under the influence of matter, but as we evolve, and some spirits, more evolved spirits, have the ability to detach themselves and enter into in contact with the spiritual world in a more ethereal state, or in a more spiritually elevated stage. But that's the minority of us. And of course, if we are controlled by our bad passions, we are going to be much more attached to the physical world, and we make our existence and our return to the spiritual world much more difficult. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Any questions? We're going to stop here. We have 2 minutes, so if anyone has any questions, we can go over here. Comments, questions. Okay, so I think everybody has a good understanding of the very basics of Spiritism. Happy to know that. Or you are embarrassed to ask questions because you think you should know the basics. There is no embarrassing questions. We have one more question here that was posted on the chat. Does the number of spirits is finite, or is it continuously growing? As the universes are always expanding, the number of spirits are always growing. God never ceases to create new spirits. So it's infinitely growing. Now, remember that spirits, the number of spirits here on Earth, it's a different story. Then you may say that it may be finite at a certain point, but still it's not. Murilo, yes.
Hi, everybody. Hi, everyone. Hi, John.
Hi.
Sounds like I feel, I don't know, but it sounds like what you just said when you disincarnated. Sounds like it's not very often we meet our dears up there. Sounds like it's not very often. I don't know. So,
you know, we always will have loved ones waiting for us there, always. What we cannot say is who they are.
Okay.
Yeah, because we are never alone. We always have familiar spirits, as they are called. So maybe your mother from the previous incarnation, not this one, is still there and continues following you and loving you. You don't remember her, but she'll be there receiving you if she's closely related to you. And eventually you will, on the need to know basis, you will know that it's her from a previous existence and be reunited and be, you know, taken care of. What we don't, because people tend to think, oh, when I go back to the spiritual world, I'm going to meet my mother, my father, my grandfather. Right. Well, you know, you take the example of André Luiz. The only spirit that was in condition to receive him was his mother. The father, the sisters, the grandfather, they were all in the lower zones in no condition of receiving him. So, we know it.
At some point, it's one.
Yeah, but what we need to understand is that we will have someone that, or more than one spirit that cares for us, that will be there to receive us and to help and assist us.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to stop here. Just a reminder what we have this Saturday. We have a lecture by our friend Ana Moreno from California. She's the president of Chico Xavier Learning Center in Oregon. And and was previously the president of Joanna De Angelis Spiritist Society in the Bay Area. She's going to be talking about, can your thoughts change your life? That's a very interesting subject. Okay, let's learn more about our thoughts. So it's this Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time through the United States Spiritist Federation Facebook, YouTube, and the TVSA YouTube channel. Okay, and so this Sunday, it's the second Sunday of the month. We'll be studying the Gospel according to Spiritism. And also, just as a heads up, this year, both Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve fall on Thursday. So we won't have our Thursday study groups on both New Year's Eve, Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve, but all our other classes, the Sundays and Tuesdays, we will have, and the Mondays, the short Monday meetings that we have at 7:30. Okay, so just for you to if you are curious what we are going to happen during these festivities, most of us are confined anyway, so we are going to have all our meetings with the exception of Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve, which are both on Thursdays. Okay, and we are going to start after this. We are going to study the Medium's book with Elmo. Okay, Zoraida, can I ask you to do the final prayer?
Yes, of course. To our Father, Jesus Christ, our spiritual benefactors, all that have contributed here tonight in our lesson. With our hearts full of gratitude, again, we thank you. We thank you for the teachers. We thank you for understanding the patience of all of us that are here trying to learn, that we be able to take this with us, to improve and to do as much as we can in our lives, bettering ourselves and all those that surround us, allowing us to be patient and have lots of charity to understand why we're here. And may we also pray for all those, our brothers and sisters on this planet, who are going through so much pain and suffering. Keep ourselves with prayers for all, giving them faith, enlightening, and giving them as inspiration with our prayers. We always ask our Father to be with them, which He is always with. But to have faith in our hearts, as we always say, we are never, never alone. And with that in mind, our Father, we ask permission to close this part of the meeting, our lessons tonight. So be it.